Sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. For the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. In his hands are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Come, let us bow down in worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the flock under his care. Today, if you only would hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did at Meribah, as you did that day at Massah in the wilderness, where your ancestors tested me. They tried me, though they had seen what I did. For 40 years I was angry with that generation. I said, they are a people whose hearts go astray, and they have not known my ways. And so I declared, in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. May the Lord bless the reading of his holy and precious word.
Thank you, Dave. Good morning again. I was tempted to introduce you to an old Paul Wilbur song on that as he's reading that, because there's one that I love there, but enough is enough, right? Love music, always have. Grew up in a musical family, as did Pat, and I grew up in a family of big band fans, because my parents were trumpeters, and so one of our little family traditions is we have a couple of movies that we watch, at least, most years we'll watch them around Christmas time or something like that. A Song is Born. Anybody hear that one? It's got all the old big band leaders in it. How about the Glenn Miller Story? Is anybody lame like me and you've watched that movie? Okay, Glenn Miller Story. How about the Benny Goodman Story? Okay, in the Benny Goodman Story, there's this one scene where three of them and their lady friends are sitting around a table. They go into the cafe, and the maitre d' seats them. This impressive-looking black gentleman. The maitre d' seats them, and they order what they want, and then the waiter brings it out, and it's the same guy. And they find out he was cooking it in the back, and then he goes out in the little stage area, and he says, as manager of this restaurant, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you your musical entertainment, Mr. Lionel Hampton. And he steps off the stage, and he comes back pushing a what do you call it, a xylophone, the auto harp, whatever the thing is, big instrument. And they start playing it. And I'm feeling a little bit this morning like Lionel Hampton, okay? Because I'm doing a little bit of everything. But it's great. I love it. Because I love serving God, and I love celebrating with all of you. And that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit this morning. We've been celebrating the birth of new baby Magruder. I can't wait to meet him. That will be fun. And isn't it great fun welcoming new little ones into your family, and you celebrate. You give thanks to God, but sometimes you just gotta shout and make a little noise. You're so excited and happy about it. We went to a wedding last Saturday. It was a little different experience for us. The groom was Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, and the wedding was in English, but the entire wedding was sung by the priest in this Greek Orthodox church, and they have all kinds of ritual that they do. And the interesting thing is, I think pretty much every step of their ritual had a place where it came from, some significance to them, that for those that are really steeped in that version of the Christian faith, they understand the significance behind the ritual, and so for them it is a very meaningful thing. For us, it was a little bit interesting. When the priest got ready to start, he says at the start, we always bless the sanctuary and the congregants, and so he came down the aisle with a censer with incense in it, and he is flinging it around like this and filling the room with the scent of the censer. And that actually represents the censer in heaven with which the heavenly dwelling place of God is filled with a sweet aroma that represents the prayers of God's people. And so they have a reason why they do it. I'm kind of glad we don't do it here because I'm allergic to it, and that was all I could do not to cough all the way through the ceremony. But they have all of these various rituals and things that they do, and ritual is not a bad thing. Okay, I think sometimes we tend to maybe short ourselves a little bit on some of the richness that ritual can bring to our lives. That consistent ways we celebrate certain things can help us in that worship process. Now, I will have to say, we tend to think of ourselves as being non-liturgical, no ritual. Yeah, just try to change the order of worship sometime and find out if we have ritual, okay? We have ways that we do things as well, traditions. It's all about celebration. God's people, Israel, were celebrating his blessings. And Psalm 95 that we just read, thank you, Dave, was a psalm used in a celebration of God. God's people, Israel, celebrated his blessing in their lives and their special place in his economy, in his eyes, and they celebrated it with exuberance and ritual and songs. If you read the book of Psalms, which is their hymn book that they used in these celebrations, there were very few of them that call us to worship that are not loud and exciting. Come before the Lord with singing, with joyful music. And he'd talk about bring the cymbals, blow the trumpets. I have a feeling that if you were not deaf before you went into a Jewish worship service, you may be by the time you came out. It got loud. They celebrated. Psalm 95 was one of those psalms of celebration, celebrating God and worshiping him. And it prompts a question. Now, what is the first question that every child learns to ask? What's the first question? Why? Why? Now, the first word may be no, but really what he means is, why do I have to do what you're telling me to do? Okay? Why? Everybody, it's reasonable to ask that question. Why? Why? Why do we do what we do? Why do we pick blue over red? Why does Dan almost always have to have a truck that's white? I don't know. Why do we cheer for one football team over another? Especially if it's the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, has there ever been a reason to cheer for the Dallas Cowboys? Come on. If the Vikings ever make it to the Super Bowl, maybe I will. But what? Pigs will have wings at that time. All right, anyway. Why did I do the crazy thing I just did? And, the famous last words, it seemed like a good idea at the time, right? Why? Why? That's a great and reasonable question. And in today's world, why is a question that gets asked a lot. People who know nothing might make grand pronouncements anyway, as if they did. They don't. But we're going to look at Psalm 95 this morning because I think it answers some of those why questions for us. If you turn to Psalm 95, I happen to be using the NIV this morning. Follow along in whichever version you are using. Why worship? Why should we worship God? Verse 1 and 2 says, "Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song." That is what we are doing, but why are we doing it? Verse 3, "For the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods." It's a call to worship, but why? Increasingly, we are living in a skeptical society that asks, why should we acknowledge any divine being? Or why should we acknowledge any higher power or any God at all? Why should we acknowledge the existence? Good question. And it's actually the same one that the psalmist answered for us here. Why worship? First, because he is our, and I'm going to change that, the, italicized, bold print, and underlined, he is the great God. Verse 3 really points out his absolute incomparability. Our God has no rival. He has no equal. He has no competition. There's no one that can enter the category against him. It's not unlike how, if you watch an NFL football game, at the very beginning when they're introducing the starting players, and they'll flash the person's face up on the screen, and they will say, Bill Johnson, University of Minnesota. John Smith, University of Arkansas. Bobby Jones from the Ohio State University. They always have to emphasize the Ohio State University as if somehow that makes them superior. In the case of God, the emphasis is right. He is the great God without comparison. The emphasis is placed rightly on his exclusivity. He's not going to share with anybody when it comes to his greatness and glory. We are in God's image. Now that image has been marred and damaged by the entrance of sin into the world, but we are in God's image, but we can never be God. There's actually a radio DJ, social media personality that has the gall to call himself Charlemagne the God. I wonder if he ever lies awake at night and wonders if he's going to be in trouble for that someday. Charlemagne the God. God has no competition. Our God is, as the philosophers used to say, that being than which nothing greater can be conceived. It's true whether we acknowledge it or not. You know, the truth doesn't become false simply because people choose not to believe it. God is the great God, the one and only, whether people acknowledge that or not. Many have too small of a God. Okay, you got to indulge me a little bit here, because I'm going to describe a scene from a movie. It was a dumb movie. It was a really dumb movie, okay? But I have to admit, there's something that I just kind of find myself entertained by them. It's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, okay? So you already know where I'm heading with this, right? The movie called The Avengers. In The Avengers, there was a fight scene between the Incredible Hulk fighting with Loki. Okay, Kari, don't mock me. I know it. I see it. The Incredible Hulk is fighting with Loki. Okay, just go with me here. And Loki is supposed to be a god from Asgard. And Loki, in his pride, says, "You are all beneath me. I am a god. I will not be bullied by," and the Hulk grabs him by the ankles and goes bam, 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 bam on the ground. And he drops him, and as he walks away, he mutters, "Puny gods." We have a lot of puny gods. We really do. We have a lot of puny gods. Money, our value systems. We could make a puny god out of our own wisdom. You ever notice most people that tout their own wisdom are pretty lacking in it? We can make puny gods out of our political leaders or out of our philosophy of life, whatever that means, or out of our knowledge. We are so smart. All of these are puny gods. In this time of conflict and disunity within our own country, it might be good to remind ourselves that no one is God except God. No politician, no influencer, no radio preacher, no financial guru, no podcaster, certainly not we ourselves. It always reminds me of the song that I say is the national anthem of hell. It's, I did it my way. Yeah, that's the problem. Okay? It's not something to be proud of. That's the explanation for why you and everyone here are either in the box or one day will be. Because we did it our way. We are puny gods. He is the King of gods. It emphasizes his superiority, his authority. And back in those days, every village and city may have its own king, but they were all subservient to a great king that would be over them, whether it was Nebuchadnezzar or any of those, Ashurbanipal, or any of those other people with names we can't pronounce today. God is the great king, even above that great king. God has no rival. The king makes the rules. The king calls the shots. He is absolutely sovereign over men and even over other, quotation marks here, other gods. It calls for his subjects to acknowledge that. And everyone will. At the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he is King. That will happen one day. Some of us will do it voluntarily out of love and gratitude and joy. Others will do it in terror and acknowledgement that they are bound for a Christless eternity that will be nothing but suffering. His subjects need to acknowledge that he is the great God. Greatness is also seen in what he did and does. He is our creator. Verse 4. In his hands are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Come, let us bow down in worship. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. He not only created the physical world, the universe, all that's in it, the animals, including the platypus. I have no idea what he was thinking of. The armadillo. Come on, give me a break, God. But he could do what he wanted. He's the creator. It's all his because he made it. I was showing somebody pictures the other day of a 10.5-foot long tandem recumbent bicycle that I built. We called it double take because we'd ride down the street and everybody go, as we went by. It was kind of funny. Watched one guy that was sitting at an intersection. He had a cigarette in his mouth, and we're riding by, and he goes. He dropped his cigarette on us. Anyway, but it was mine. I made it. I could do what I wanted with it. I gave it to a friend of mine. It's hanging in his barn right now. I gave it away. Why? Because I wanted to. It was mine. I could do with it what I wanted. Our Maker can do what he wants with us as well. He can do what he wants with us. Verse 6, again, come, let us bow down in worship, let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. He made us. He's our creator. He calls for us to submit, to bow down in worship, to bow the knee to his purpose. A word that we don't like today, submission. We need to submit to our great God, who is our creator. The Bible in several places uses the analogy of clay in the potter's hand. And the potter can form that clay however he chooses. The same lump of clay, he can make a beautiful platter with just the right amount of sides on it that is going to serve, on which the roasted lamb for the Passover feast would be served. And with that same lump of clay, he can make a toilet. It's his. He's the potter. He can do with it as he pleases. I have a little different word picture that comes up in my mind. I think of a pile of lumber. Okay? There's a pile of lumber laying there. When I was a kid, every time I saw a pile of lumber, it was in jeopardy. I ruined more of my dad's good lumber because I was making something out of it, you know, a playhouse or a go-kart or whatever. But I can see that beautiful pile of kiln-dried, really nice wood, and I can build a house with it. Or I can build a campfire with it. It's mine. I can do what I choose. I can do the thing that gives me the greatest pleasure at that moment. It's mine. Oftentimes, creative people use common things in original ways. And we look at that pallet, that wood pallet that's laying there beside the Kmart. And we look at it and go, scrap wood. Let's throw it in a pile and burn it, or let's, whatever. But there's an artist that will look at it and say, art materials. And they'll cut it up, and they'll cut wedges, and they'll fit them together, and they'll make a sunrise out of pallet material. My mom had a piano in the basement of our house. When it got flooded, the piano was bobbing in the waves across the room. Yeah. We had to get the piano out and get rid of it because it was shot. And we did some disassembly and got ready to move. But a gentleman came along that saw parts of the piano laying out in the yard. And he pulled in and he said, "I'm an artist. I make artwork out of piano harps. May I have your piano?" And he took it. And I never got to see it, but my understanding is he does beautiful artwork with these piano harps. It was his. He could do with it as he pleased. God is sovereign. We are his workmanship, and he can do with us as he pleases. We don't always understand his ways, but he is sovereign, and he is good. He's not capricious. He's not mean-spirited. He's not out to make our lives difficult. Ill-treating of his creatures is something he doesn't do, even though he could. At the creation station in camp, I like to teach kids that there is, in fact, a creator. He made everything, including us, and so we're at his disposal. But we also teach them about the concept of stewardship, taking care of the things around us. The idea that since the things we have around us have value, they should be cared for and used in an appropriate manner. If you don't steward deers, they get overpopulated and can become more susceptible to such herd maladies as chronic wasting disease and Buick bumper. We need to husband or steward the creation around us. But you hunt and harvest responsibly so that you get what you need while taking appropriate care for the herd. God stewards us, using us for his glory and our good. And likewise, we, in his image, are also to be stewards. So we don't treat the environment capriciously, but like God, we have authority to use it as we deem fit, right? He is our creator, and that means he can do what he believes is best with us. And then third, finally, he's our caregiver. Verse 7, "For he is our God, and we are the people of his pastures, the flock under his care." Though he can do whatever he wants, he does what in his love he deems best. Use the shepherd imagery here. A shepherd takes care of his sheep, and he actually will go over and above the call of duty sometimes to take care of those sheep because he cares for them. And we are God's people, and he cares for us. Of course, the greatest example of that was when he loved us so much that he sent his son to earth to die on the cross, to pay the penalty for our sin, to repair the damage that we did, and to make it possible that we could have a reestablished fellowship with his Father. I'm a caregiver to children in the summer when they're there at camp. We've all been probably in some context caregivers. We have the power. We have the physical strength. We could physically force our will on those kids, right? We could physically force them to do what we want them to do. But we would rather help them come to want to do what we want them to do because it's best. Okay? So psychologists will have different camps that they fall into of how they understand human nature and how to work with human nature. So you have the behaviorist camp. They are the ones that are all about reward and punishment, to change behavior through reward and punishment, carrot and stick. And they say sometimes you got to use a lot more carrot and other times you got to use stick. I think my dad was a behaviorist. I got the carrot. My brother got the stick, okay? Because we were different people and we behaved differently, and so at times he had to treat us differently. I think my dad probably would call himself well, he probably wouldn't call him anything, but if he had to put himself in one of those camps, he probably would have said he was a behaviorist. And then there are those that call themselves cognitive. They follow the cognitive model, and that is it all happens up here. All your decision making happens in your brain. And so you try to change their mind about something. And when you change their mind, well, then the behavior will follow. And there's truth to that too, isn't there? If you change somebody's mind about something, if you want someone to vote in a particular direction and they're inclined to go this way, but you convince them that this is wrong, and you convince them and they go over and vote that way, you are acting there as a cognitive member of the cognitive camp. I am what has been referred to as a cognitive behaviorist. How about that? I get the best of both worlds, okay? And basically what that means is you help them to change their minds and values about something, and then behavior follows, but that you may need to do some interim behavior modification. There's a term for that. It's called discipline. Okay? I want to change my kids' minds about what is right and what is wrong and what they should do, but sometimes I have to use some discipline to get them to do what they want. And with kids, it can be a little bit challenging, right? With our son, Isaac, he was pretty straightforward. If he didn't want to do something, you were going to work at it, okay? He would be very, very difficult. Now, Alan was more compliant in some regards, but there would be something that he was thinking about doing that he wasn't supposed to do, and you could watch him. There were times I could see what he was doing, and you'd see the wheels turning in his head. Now, if I do this, this is going to be the punishment I'm going to get, but yep, it's worth it, and then he would do it. You know what I mean? So with Alan, we would work very hard at changing his mind about things, but sometimes we had to kind of give him a little bit of, shall we say, physical encouragement to do the thing that we wanted him to do. He would need a little discipline. I'm happy to say that Alan has been he has turned out just wonderfully, and I lost my spot. He has turned out wonderfully. He's a leader in his church, and he is living for Jesus, and we're really excited about that. And I'd like to think we played at least a very tiny role in helping that happen by the fact that we didn't let him just get away with anything he wanted to do, because boy, did he have ideas. Oh my goodness. And most of them he even survived. But we use the term discipline. We have little praise for parents that don't care enough about their kids to guide and teach and discipline them, right? I mean, how many times have you said that is some lousy parenting about someone because they're just letting their kids run wild and crazy and do, whatever they want to do? Free-range parents there is a technical term that applies to their kids. Okay, it's a very technical term. It's they are brats. Okay, because if they have not been appropriately disciplined, the world revolves around them and what they want to do. And if you don't like it, that's your problem, not theirs. Okay, that's the result of parenting without discipline. But because God cares about us, he disciplines us. Hebrews chapter 12. I'll give you a second to go there. You've heard it before, but I think it bears repeating. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5. The writer of Hebrews, who I have no idea who it is. Nobody does. I kind of think Apollos myself, but that's a vote out of the dark. No idea. Hebrews chapter 12, beginning at verse 5. And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Wow, that's a strong statement. Apply that to the free-range parents. Oof. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to him. But he disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but it later yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. God is our caregiver. And sometimes that means he puts us through difficulties that help direct us into the right path. He is our loving Father. He is our shepherd, and he guides us. And he cares for us so much that he doesn't let us just go our own way like sheep would go. Pride causes us to stumble. Recognizing God's greatness puts us in proper perspective. In fact, I often say, and have said it during our Habakkuk study, I often say that it's in the context of worship, that we can make some sense out of what's going on in the world. That we start to understand God's ways. It's in worship that we understand that he is absolutely God, and that he's our maker, and that he loves us and cares for us. We are objects of God's special sacrificial love and care. We are not great as he is, but because of what he has done in our lives, we are his special subjects of love. The writer goes on and offers some comparisons between the historical time when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness in Meribah and Massah. We actually talked about that last week in Sunday school. He referred to a time that they rejected his instructions to go into the land. Trust me, I got this, guys. Go. But they rejected it. In their arrogance, they chose to doubt what God was telling them and instead made a judgment call on their own. It was a bad decision. 40 days of spying resulted in 40 years of wandering. When we recognize the greatness of God, we will worship him, and we will trust him even at times when we face challenges. Why worship? Because he is the great God, our creator and our caregiver, and praise is due him. Lord, thank you that as great as you are, that you condescended to love us, to direct us as our King, to use us for your glory and honor as our Creator, and to give us the care that we needed and discipline to become the people you want us to be. Help us, Lord, to celebrate you with joy and exuberance. We thank you for all of the reasons that we have to give you praise and worship. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to sing together. 10,000.